Hey guys, welcome to the Behind the Seams podcast. I'm Nunzio Signori, and today we're speaking with TJ Hunt. I've known TJ for many years, going back to our days when we started RPP at Sloatsburg, New York, and it's a great pleasure to have him on the show today. TJ is the Director of Scouting and Operations for PBR in New Jersey. There's really no one better to discuss the current state of recruiting than showcase operators on the front lines, and TJ is one of the best. So before we get to the show, I just wanted to briefly cover TJ's background, because if there is such a thing as a baseball family, the Hunts are it. So let's start with his grandfather, the late Jim Hunt, who spent much of his life coaching baseball at Englewood, Tenafly High Schools, and Fairleigh Dickinson. TJ's father, Mickey, was also head coach at Ramapo. His older brother, Shooter, currently with PBR as well, was a college star at Tulane and was drafted in the first round of the 2008 MLB Draft by the Minnesota Twins. His younger brother, KC, is currently with Mississippi State and was selected by the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 12th round of the 2022 MLB Draft, but has chosen to return to school for this spring. TJ himself is a 2015 graduate of Monmouth, where he pitched for 4 years and played for the Rockland Boulders after graduation. How did I do there, man? That's pretty good, right?
That's good. That's perfect. That's right on.
And to cap it off, I believe he got married recently. So congratulations on that, my man. We'd like to welcome to the show today, Director of Scouting and Operations for PBR, TJ Hunt. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nunzio. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a long time since we've seen each other up in Sloatsburg on that, in the gym there.
This guy's so busy. Like I asked him 3 times if he could get him on the show, and I thought he didn't like me anymore. I was like, "What's going on here? I can't this guy to give me an answer." First, I have to ask, what's it like being raised as a Hunt? You've come from a lineage of ball players. I think every baseball family has their own unique stories associated with them. What was it like growing up? What was the protocol? What was, was it mandatory to play baseball? Just tell us what it's like a little bit.
No, it was fun growing up. There was a lot of wiffle ball games, a lot of tournaments, a lot of games that we went to, a lot of games playing, a lot of games watching. I was, always going to my older brother's games, and then, my younger brother was coming to my games and I was going to his games. So it was a lot of traveling, but all
which is
good.
a good learning curve. Good learning curve to watch,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think we spent a lot of summers just out in the backyard, just like any kid would do, like playing with your brother and competing and learning how to compete, and a lot of tears, I'm sure, a lot of frustration, but it was good. It was all good.
Awesome. What's it like running a showcase business? I mean, I know my buddy Dan Savette at PBR New York, he's all over the place. I know you guys get pulled in a million different directions. Can you give us some of the big players in the day-to-day of TJ Hunt? What is it like? What goes on every day on a daily basis here?
It's certainly rewarding. I feel like we're like the liaison between, the college coach, the travel coach, and the kid and his parents. I think, we're constantly trying to figure out what dates are good dates to have a PBR showcase event. We're constantly talking to college coaches on, just bouncing ideas off of them for just events, and also rankings. Like I'm sure Dan's the same way in New York and Pennsylvania, but he's got his group of coaches and scouts that he bounces ideas and evaluations off of, just to make sure that he's on the same kind of track as far as that goes. But the day-to-day is, just lots of emails, and, you're trying to put out some content.
The emails have to be amazing, a lot of emails, right?
Oh yeah. The emails, they certainly come. There's definitely an ebb and flow to it, especially when, you haven't done a rankings update in a couple months. So you don't really hear from those angry parents or kids about, why is my son here versus there, but it's all good. It's all part of the job.
So that's my next question, rankings. How do you rank kids? And do you receive those difficult emails from parents about rankings? How do you deal with that situation? So 2-part question. How do you rank the athlete? And once you do rank the athlete, I know you're going to tell me that you get these emails, so there's no way you can't. How do you deal with those situations?
So the evaluation process, I think everybody kind of goes about it a little bit differently. And if you ask any other PBR state, they'll tell you something a little bit different, or even a college coach. But the way I like to think about it is, if you come to a PBR event, you're obviously going to get your video and all of your metric stuff. I think that is equivalent to a kid like taking the SAT or the ACT in high school, right? You're going to get your metrics and your scores. But you also need to figure out if the kid, is actually good, right? You're going to try to figure out if this kid is actually diligent in his work, and you're going to look at his GPA. Like, is he a 4.0 student and he's got a 1600 on his SAT, or is there some type of discrepancy there, right? I think the GPA is equivalent to the gameplay. Does the kid actually perform in game? Like, is he going to put out 105 exit velocity in a showcase event when the ball is right down the middle for him? And is he going to hit doubles and home runs in the game? I think it's all, engrossed into evaluating a player.
So this might sound like a dumb question, but for those GPAs, are they included in an athlete's ranking? Does that have anything to do with an athlete's ranking?
No, not so much.
Okay. Because I do see it on social media. The GPA is always obviously listed, which is important,
Sure.
But I didn't know if that has any weight in his ranking. When you're ranking guys at a tournament, at an event, what are the categories and how are they ranked?
There's a bunch of different ones, right? The obvious ones are velocity, pitching velocity, right? If we're at like a tournament event, we're looking at velocity. And then after that, we're looking at pitchability, location. Can he spin the ball? How's the breaking ball? Is it sharp, or is it kind of just like floats in there and uses gravity to break? As a hitter in the games, we're looking at if the kid's just the best player in the field. Like, does he make consistent hard contact? Is it late in the game and is he stepping up and he's hitting a double in the gap and he's putting his team ahead? Like, that stands out, right? I think guys also point to like how he carries himself in the field, right? Like, does he run on and off the field? Like, if he strikes out, is he throwing his helmet and, cussing up a storm in the dugout?
I tell my guys all the time, get as athletic as possible, because a big,
Sure.
strong body exudes confidence. A lot of times coaches will make a slight decision before they even see you play. They're looking for number 9 and they look at number 9 out in the field. Number 9's got this really great physique and they're ready to like this guy. And
absolutely.
I think that kyphotic rounded shoulders and sitting there and, just not being that developed. I think sometimes, even though that might be a great player, the initial interpretation of that is this guy might be a little lazy. Do you agree with that? Because I do know that I speak with a lot of high-level pitching coaches in college, and one of the things they look for when they're ranking their guys is frame, is size, athletic build.
If they pass the eye test, like, you're going to lock in on that kid, right? Like, he's got broad shoulders, he's got that reverse triangle physique, right, with his shoulders. Right. That's going to stand out. And then the true evaluation process comes in. How does he move on the field? Right. Is he kind of cloggy in the infield, or does he actually move well and he's got that frame? So, very important.
So the body language and behavior, what type of behavior works best in an athlete's favor during a showcase? You had mentioned, what are some recommended do's and don'ts behavior-wise? You started mentioning, like, does he throw his hat? Does he throw his bat? Are there any other things that you can give some guys some pointers at, like, when they come to a showcase, what we like to see and what we don't like to see?
Yeah, just guys that are just always upbeat, just they want to be there. They want to play. They're so happy to be on the field and competing, right? You get guys sometimes at events where it's hot and they're kind of just dragging along and, going through the motions. And that's not really a good thing that we want to see. We want to see guys that are excited to be there and they want to, hop out on the field and perform as best they can.
In terms of the different kinds of showcases, some have scouts, some simply collect data for recruiting purposes. Can you give us a rundown of the differences in how these two showcases are run?
So we run showcases pretty much year round. I mean, some states will run them like all year round, 12 months out of the year. I think I like to run them, up until late October, and then we'll take from late October to Christmas or a little after Christmas off, just to give everybody a rest. But a lot of the showcase stuff and the scheduling of the events is predicated on the dead period and the quiet period of Division I, right? So, I think a lot of that is involved in our scheduling. And even though we run events in the wintertime when the Division I dead period is going on, those are the events where we're trying to collect the metrics and post social media on the top guys. I think once the recruiting calendar opens up, throughout the spring and summer, that's when we're going to strategically, schedule the bigger events, to get the college coaches there. It's kind of a balancing game for us, to be honest with you. You have to just figure out like, all right, like this is going on here, this is going on there. This is a good day to do a big, invite only event. I'm going to expect a lot of scouts here. But even if there aren't scouts there, I think it's incredibly beneficial. We have, like I said, we have the TrackMan, the blast data that all about. And, we get the video and we have the social media coverage. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast here, like constantly in communication with the college coaches. And I can't tell you how many texts I get after an event happens that we have where, it's during the dead period and they're like, hey, can you have Johnny call me at 6 o'clock tonight? Look good on Twitter. Everything looked great. So there's benefits to all of it.
Yeah, you guys definitely run a really, really tight ship, and I'm really impressed with that. A question for you about some advice to young athletes and parents. Being in the private sector, a lot of times I see some kids, maybe it's just me, but it seems that they're overdoing it at times in regards to going to showcases. Probably see that kid who shows up at every single one, not much change in anything. How should young athletes and parents determine which showcases are appropriate for them? There's so many options. I think parents and athletes could use some help here as to, I always tell guys, listen, man, you got to also make sure you're not going there and showcasing yourself off the list.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exposure or being exposed, right? Like
Exactly.
That's the whole balancing.
Can you let some parents know, how do you determine which is right for your kid?
I think a good baseline, Nunzio, is, and from training guys, right? Like you're going to start at a baseline, and then in 6 weeks, we're going to measure you again, right? Exactly. We're going to measure your power output. And if nothing increases, then we have to make some type of change in our training, right? I think that's very similar to, attending a showcase, right? It's really important to attend one where you get your baseline numbers, right? And then after every so often, if you're training, 4 or 5 months goes by, you come to another one and boom, now all of a sudden your 7.6 60-yard dash is turned into a 7.1 60-yard dash, right? Or your exit velocity was at 78, now it's at 87, So that just tells you more of the picture of the player. And I think that's important too, in from an evaluator standpoint, right? From a college coach's standpoint, where this kid, he was 5'10", 150 pounds back in February.
Projectability.
Now he's 5'11", 175 pounds, and it's July, and his numbers have improved, right? And that just shows that whole graph, like that line graph of where the kid's going, right? The projectability of where he'll be. And guys and college coaches are projecting, players that are sophomores where they're going to be in 3-4 years when they get on campus, right? So if a kid's, skinny and slender, he's putting up okay numbers, but he's gradually increasing over the course of a year's time. That's a no-brainer for a college coach and a recruit.
That was some unbelievable information, and I'll tell you why. That is exactly like you said. That's exactly what we look at when we're looking at velocity, or we're looking at anything, exit velocity, running speed. Our job is to take a baseline and make it better, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times people confuse these two methods, the showcase and the training, and I think that one isn't competing with the other. One is enhancing the other. So when you go to a showcase and you guys do baseline metrics on guys, they should come in. We should now have a game plan of what to do to make sure the next time they show up at one of your showcases, okay, these metrics are great. These metrics need to improve. So we need to do this. It kind of gives the guy a game plan from you on what needs to improve next time. And I really, really try to encourage the parents to take these tournaments. And like you said, if you're throwing 78 miles an hour and then, you're throwing 79 miles an hour 6 months from now, you might want to wait until, you're throwing harder and investigate why you're not throwing harder and do some work in between those showcases to make sure that you are, and use places like the private sector, like my place or other places that are going to say, okay, wow, you're right. Your 60 time needs to be improved. Let's work on things that are going to make your 60 time improve, So these showcases, I think parents just keep trying to stuff a square peg into a round hole. They don't really realize that, show some projectability from year to year. And that's going to be the best way to get somebody's attention.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think, you have to invest in yourself, right? When you're in high school, and if your true goal is to play college baseball, then it requires doing all of the above, right? It requires you, doing what you can in the weight room to get stronger. It also requires you to, when the spotlight's on you, to perform, right? So it's all part of the process.
So what trends are you seeing that are positive, and what some that you may think are negative from a player development standpoint? Everybody's getting involved in player development. I see a lot of teams trying to add this, or private sector places trying to add this, and everyone's trying to focus on player development, which it's very cool. It's a great thing. How is it different from 5 years ago? Do you notice player development? What differences have you seen, and positives or negatives?
I've definitely seen more guys invested in, like, just anecdotally invested in working out and getting in the weight room. I've definitely seen guys. I think guys now, as opposed to when we were first getting to know each other, are way stronger and way more athletic than they were 5, 6, 7 years ago.
I
And
agree 100%.
that's awesome. I think they're really kind of taking accountability for what's needed when you get to campus, right? If a prospect goes to a college, campus, right, for a practice, regardless of the division, they're going to see guys that are way more physical than they are, right? And a lot of the times when freshmen get to campus, they get kind of in this rut where they're like, man, like I got this 23-year-old senior in front of me. I'm just turning 18. He's 225 pounds and he bench presses, whatever, 300 pounds. He's way stronger than I am. I'm not there yet. Right. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you get on campus. And I think guys have started to realize that. And I think facilities like your facility have really, tried to hone in on what it takes to get to campus and actually produce, right? And be somebody that the coaches are looking forward to, maybe as in their sophomore year, where they can get more playing time.
I'll tell you a great story that happens every single year, at least once. Guys go off, my seniors go off to college, and these are guys that I've generally had maybe 1 or 2 years, 3 years, some 4 years, in the weight room and working on their strength and their mechanics and their speed. They'll go in as freshmen, and the coach will call me up and he'll say, hey, man, I just want to let you know, so-and-so, he showed up here and he's stellar in the weight room. I've actually gone to the point of using him, the strength and conditioning coach is using him as examples of what really good form is. And it gives a freshman, like as you just said, a freshman comes in and gets like buried by a bigger, stronger guy, or a freshman comes in with a really good learning base, autonomy of how to move and strength. And all of a sudden, this acclimates this kid a lot quicker with the upperclassmen because he's in the weight room. And I think he gains the respect that he deserves a lot quicker than if he was coming in there and just like, feeling buried.
Yeah, there's definitely a psychological effect for a kid who's
100%.
strong enough and has the aptitude, right, in the weight room.
Do you see a difference in guys drastically sometimes when you see them from year to year? You just see the bodies, because you're looking at guys right during the growing phase. You're seeing kids, you must see some kids and just go, oh my God, dude. Like, yeah. Last year you were 4 inches shorter.
It's funny that you say that. There's a kid that I do lessons with. He's a left-handed pitcher. He's pretty good. He was like, mid-70s, but he was still kind of growing. I saw him again this winter. I was like, man, oh man, your shoulders are strong, your chest is popping out, and the ball's coming out a little bit harder, So I give credit whenever I see guys after a year. If I don't see them from March to January when we start lessons again, I'm like, man, oh man, you really put in the work and the time. It's good. It's showing off. And
that kid's going to walk out of that place floating after you tell him.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing to tell a kid, because I can't even tell you, it's like a shot of adrenaline in the arm for that kid. I'm trying to emphasize the fact of how important it is for kids to feel athletic, because when they feel athletic, there's a healthier mindset there, I think. I got one more question for you. Without naming any teams, I know you're not in a position to do that, nor do you want to do that. But without naming any travel teams, what are some qualities that parents and young athletes should look for? Because you deal with a lot of travel teams. What are some qualities that you would say to look for or to stay away from when you're searching out a good travel team, travel?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think there's a lot of different avenues you could go about playing travel baseball. Do you want to play locally, and is your goal to play at a local college? Then have to find the local team, right, to play on. If you want to kind of see where you're at in terms of like, a regional kind of college goal, I think you have to look at the pedigree of the travel program. How long have they been around? How many commits have they had over the last couple of years? And, what context does the coach have? I don't think necessarily the coach is going to like say, oh, I have contacts at this school and that school. I think that's disingenuous in general.
So that's something to actually look out for.
Yeah, I think that's a good pedigree to have for sure. Yeah, just to look at, to see where guys went, and just to get a general idea of what they do. I think it's also important to see if they still have it, like the last couple of years of where their teams have played, like what tournaments they've gone to, what events they've been to, right? Do they go down south for to Georgia, or do they kind of stay locally or travel within like a 2 to 3 hour radius? That'll give you more of a general idea of what type of context these coaches have, right? Like if they're only traveling in a 2-3 hour radius, chances are they only have contacts in a 2-3 hour radius. But I think you have to kind of have to work backwards, in my opinion. Like, have to establish where you want to go. Like, what's your plan? Do you want to stay up north where it gets cold, for half the year, or do you want to, go down south and play where it's always warm? Do you want to stay in the Northeast where you're close to home and you can travel home every so often, or do you not care about that? Do you want to go far away? In that case, then I think it's important to travel as much as you financially can. So definitely different ways you can go about finding a good travel team.
So as far as what a travel team may offer you or your son or daughter, as far as long-term athletic development, what would you say are, you can look for in a really good organization?
I think good contacts with, like, facilities such as yourself, like a good gym. I think a strong kind of structure for off season, whether it's a pitcher having a throwing program during the winter to get them prepared for tryouts in March, just having like a general kind of structure of where they need to be and the steps they need to take when they're not playing baseball, right? Because the baseball part's easy. They can schedule games. We can play, at really any field, June, July, August, even in September, right? But the difficult part is kind of forecasting what I need to do so I'm not at the same place as I was at the end of the fall season come, next March, April.
100% long-term athletic development. Where am I going to put my kid? He's 14 now that I know at 16, he has developed so great that, you're doing a good thing. You're doing your kid a service by doing that kind of, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, absolutely.
This has been great, man. It's been so great seeing you. Once again, how can people reach out to you, TJ? How can they reach you?
Through email, hunt@prepbaseballreport.com, on Twitter @PBR New Jersey, and on Instagram @PBR New Jersey. DM if you need, email if you need. I'll get right back to you.
Great. And you guys can reach me at Nunzio Signore on Twitter. My facility, RPP_baseball, is on Twitter and Instagram. Our website is rocklandpeakperformance.com. If you haven't checked out my book on velocity-based training, how to apply science, technology, and data to maximize performance, you can get that through Human Kinetics. You can also purchase it on Amazon. Once again, we'd like to thank TJ Hunt from PBR New Jersey for being on. It's always great to see him. It's been a while. And thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
And we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Seams podcast. Take care.